Hi, hello everybody. Welcome to our first in a series of talks with young Hong Kong conductors who have made it big on the world stage. And I am so thrilled today to invite and have here with us Elim Chan from Hong Kong, who is at the moment based in Amsterdam in Holland in Europe, the same time zone as me actually, so very convenient. Welcome, Elim.
Hello, Trey. Hello, everyone.
Thank you so much for joining us. Everybody's very happy to have you here, and there's so much that everybody wants to know and to hear from you. So why don't we get right into it? We were saying just now before that it's quite rare in Hong Kong to have conductors come out. You know, everybody plays piano, violin, and maybe sing a little bit, and then a lot of them end up going to university to study something else, doctors, lawyers, engineers, whatever. But your background, I think, is also kind of unique because you had some twists and turns yourself, like actually like me too, I think, several of us. So could you tell us about how you got started?
Um, so yeah, now actually thinking about it, it's quite yeah, some twists and turns. Well, I started like everybody actually, like how you said it. I started playing piano when I was 6. I joined like the Yips Children's Choir when I was also,
Okay.
was young. So I started, also singing. So
Mhm.
in a choir, which I still think it actually made a huge difference.
Really?
And
Oh.
yes, that was quite an impact in my life because I actually kept singing until I really, my career started. So I sang through the till my doctorate degree. I was still singing.
Why
So it
why
was
was why was it so important?
I think it's something that is very fundamental about music and about singing. It's so direct from coming out from you because when you play an instrument, you're working dealing with another object to make music. But I think singing is something so like no barrier, so direct and so immediate that I
Mhm.
think also because I started so young, that was the first thing I did actually before I picked up piano. So it was
Oh, okay.
something that, yeah, that was like, I was around other children and we were sort of growing up together. It gave me this social, that's where you make your friends. And so it
Mm.
was, I think that is something also later on when orchestras, how you work with orchestras, that's something that really, come back to me why, how it is important to be in a group and understand that. But we can get back to that later. So yeah,
Exactly.
so I did the children's choir. I started piano, and I also then picked up cello at some point. Um,
Yay!
and and this is so all was happening, But I think also as a kid growing up in Hong Kong with Hong Kong parents, of course there's this sort of belief that or a myth, music is a hobby. Don't be a musician,
Mhm.
right? So and so by the time when I could choose, do I go into the arts or sciences? I think when I was form 3, form 4. So that's when I thought, okay, then I wanted to be in the science route because even though I loved music, I also loved sciences. Especially, I had this like crazy dream because I love like Sherlock Holmes, these stories. I read all I love, also these shows like CSI, and so I was like, okay, I wanted to be a spy. I wanted to be like a detective. So all these things like on the other side of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Um, and I really was like so crazy about criminals. I wanted to like understand them. So I thought, okay, so I needed to do biology, chemistry, or something to get into the sort of later like psychology or medical field. So I did that, and but still playing music. And actually the first time I conducted, I was 12. I was in secondary school, 12, 13. And then because again I was in the girls choir, I went to Good Hope School, and that's when I got the first opportunity to conduct. It was
A
my own choir.
choir. A
And then my
conductor
teacher,
choir. Okay.
yeah, so said, can you just conduct, lead this I had no idea.
But
But
wait, but if your teacher singled you out to conduct, you must have already shown some kind of ability or tendency to want to lead.
I guess
I mean,
so.
must could not have been totally random, right?
Right. But I think she saw it more than I saw it myself. And
Mm,
and I remember I also really enjoyed speech and poem reciting. You know, back in the
oh,
day, also you have like the Hong Kong
okay.
schools, you know, the speech festival.
Yeah.
So I love, you know, um, reading poems and you know try to get into the world of the poem or you know whatever the speech is,
Mm,
and I guess from there because she's also the teacher who trained the sort of the choral group, and
oh.
so she was like I think from then on she saw something in me that you know that was somehow translate into conducting later because maybe I'm also not afraid to just stand out and do something.
But you were still not on the conducting path at this point.
No, no, it
Yeah.
was all sort of like, you know, I have no idea how to do it. I mean, I was 13 and 14, you know, and so I
Uh-huh.
was just conducting the choir, the junior choir, and you know, we went to the Hong Kong Schools Festival, music festival, and we won some prizes. But then, you know, still it was all like, I mean, it was fun, and I also thought, you know, I almost even felt like you know but I still love sciences. You know that was the
Mm,
goal. You know
yeah.
to this is the route and this is all just a hobby. I really believe that. And actually, even though I knew like wow this is really natural for me, um, I never thought that actually it could become something like what I see, like what
Mm,
people do. Because at the time I think you know I went to concerts in the Hong Kong Philharmonic or Hong Kong Symphony Orchestra and you know many times I saw Yip Wing Si, you know she was the conductor back then and then also you know then in Symphonietta and actually it helped because I thought she's a lady
yeah.
and she's conductor
Exactly.
and so I also thought it's possible but how to get there it was just so like you know how to do you know what she does but from where I am you know what is the path but then because of the science dream that I had you know the music part was sort of all just never serious.
Mm,
So and then yeah, so I went you know through school in the sciences, and the music sort of then become a sort of secondary, and then the primary was science, and then it all went into university. But then you know when I thought that this is it, like you know, and I didn't even do any music classes my first year.
yeah.
Music sort of
In
found
university.
yeah in the university my bachelor's. So I went to the
Okay.
States,
Yeah.
um, and because I still had like too many ideas at the time, so the States gave me that chance to give me 1 or 2 years to figure things out.
Right.
And yeah, and music sort of again, like it was so strange. I the first year again, I went to sing in a choir, even though I have other classes, but I thought, you know, after classes, why not sing in a choir? And then weirdly, with many sort of mysterious ways, you know, again, the conductor then said, "Can you be my assistant?" So because after the audition, she said, "You have good ears. So can you be my assistant? Can you conduct a piece on the in the autumn concert?" Okay, you know, again, so
Okay.
it was very close to what I experienced. You know, I have my main thing going on. Sure, I will conduct something. Why not? But then I think after that concert, then the music department from the university, you know, then they saw me and they were like, "Elim, you really need to think about this seriously."
Really? Oh.
So that's when I'm like, again, some people see something in me that I'm like,
Yeah.
I like, you know, so I felt like I've been running away from something that's really natural. And
Mm,
I love sciences, but I know it's not as natural as music comes to me. I have to
hmm.
spend many more hours to try to figure out a chemistry lab report, you know, then when I look at music, it was just somehow I understand it much more like a language I know already.
Mm.
Um, so because of that, then it's so sort of like I cannot run away from it anymore. So I switch. So then in the end,
Okay.
yeah.
When did
So
you switch?
it was like actually a moment in my second year in bachelor's. So
Okay.
at this point, I was still thinking I should be like a psychology major, and you know, but I love music, and so I started taking music classes, and again, the conductor asked me, we were doing Verdi's Requiem. So with a big choir, orchestra. And he said, I want to go into the hall to listen. Elim, can you conduct this part for me? So it was the DSE, right? Which is like one of the most shocking and famous moments in music, right? It's like with the bass drum, just you really feel like house door open up, you know, and you know, the big chorus singing, and with these trumpets, you know, like offstage trumpets playing, you know. So it was like quite a moment. And then I said, okay, fine, I will conduct this part. And then I conducted, and then I felt, okay, like I felt literally like a lightning bolt on my head. And then
Wow.
it's almost like, okay, like this is where I want to be. I have, and it's something that I have done since I was 14. So I was like, what am I doing? You know, it's almost like life is trying so many ways to try to push me into this. And I've been trying to run away or do other things. And because I was afraid, you know, I have all these excuses for myself. So I think that moment really was so shocking. And I remember I immediately also was like, you know, bass drum, you need to do this. No, cello's this, you know, and I started fixing things because I thought it's not, you know, this is what I'm visualizing in my head. So I started rehearsing in the orchestra at the spot, you know, without my teacher. Yeah, after that, I knew I cannot go back. And then and on, I was like, okay, how do I get to masters? I need to do conducting because, of course, you cannot study conducting as a subject, like really focus on it until in your masters. So, so then, you know, so coming from where I was, you know, so I could do a bachelor's in music, but then, you know, and then so I have to find a good program, who are the good teachers out there, to audition, you know, so suddenly I was like, poof, you know. So I think from that moment,
Sorry, but when you say a bachelor's in music, then what is it? Musicology, music history, or music performance?
Yeah, so because I didn't go to conservatory. So for example,
Right.
like in the conservatory, you can focus this the cello, you know, violin.
Right.
But because I was in the liberal arts college in the States, so they only have like in the general music degree. So in the end, so I think I remember I went to all my teachers, musicology teacher, music history, theory, you know, I just get everything, you know, out of everyone. I did all of the classes. And I even went to like a different school because there was this, I was at Smith College and then in Massachusetts, and there's this system where I could go to Amherst, also take classes. So I remember I went to other places to find, like, this is the Brahms scholar. And so I go there, you know, do independent study, you know. And so I was trying so hard because I knew in some ways I was quite behind. I knew I didn't know a lot of things. I didn't know how to read a full score. So yeah, so it was, you know, and also started going to master classes in conducting like in the summer. So it was, you know, so in 2 years time, I tried to put together, you know, my sort of, you know, what can I do before to prepare, you know, for a conducting major in the master's.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you started, you know, I guess you say your first moment really was when you were 12 or 13
Yeah.
with the choir. But, you know, I love what you said, though, in the beginning about how singing made such a big impact because, you know, I think more than one of my teachers have always, I remember one of my teachers, when I left him on my last lesson, I said, you know, I was freaking out. I said, how am I going to manage without a teacher for the next year or something? And he said, well, you know, when in doubt, sing it. That always stuck with me. And I try to tell people that also. And what you said is absolutely right. I think it's so important because it's so natural and so
Yes.
human, right? And we all struggle with our instruments and, you know, forget and we don't listen so well. But then when you sing, so I love what you're saying about how you join a choir and also, you know, sometimes parents, they're always asking, my child is 2 years old, 3 years old. What instrument should they play? Are you kidding? I said sing, you know, sing.
Yeah,
That's the easiest thing, right? Yeah.
absolutely. I really agree.
Yeah.
And
So you started
yeah.
that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I just saw some questions coming in the chat. So
Yeah, we'll get to those.
We'll get to them. Yes.
Yeah, because we're not done with you yet, with your background yet, because it's just the very beginning we've covered, and then you went to Michigan, was it, to get your
Mhm.
master's and
Yeah.
doctorate,
Yeah.
right? And during that time, you continued conducting and things like that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And and of course, then the biggest sort of launching moment was the competition
Mm,
that I did. So it was actually right before I finished my
okay,
so it was 2014. Yeah. So I was,
okay.
because anyway, I was thinking again, I never thought to come to Europe. And I, at the time already, I did my bachelor's, master's, doctorate. So it was like 10 years in the States. And I
Mm,
was thinking to stay in the States at the time, I thought, to find a job, like an assistant job with a professional orchestra or teach, because I got the DMA. So, it's also very natural.
yeah.
Um, and then but I thought, and why not do some competitions and see where I am compared to everyone in the world. So then I came across, so I was looking, of course there are a few competitions, very famous, like Prison Song and Marlowe competition.
Yeah.
And then the Donatello Flick London Symphony Orchestra competition as well. So I thought, okay, sure, why not, so I sent in a tape and then got invited to the 20, the top 20 to go to
Uh-huh.
London.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then it was quite a Cinderella moment, I thought, because then it was the first competition that I've ever done, and
Yeah.
I was really lucky to win it, and then things
Now,
really changed.
but I have to ask, we all know how to prepare for an instrumental competition. How does one prepare for an orchestra conducting competition? Not everybody has a orchestra at home, right?
Mm-mm. Yes, yeah, but I think at the time I was in school, so I was in Michigan, and I think I remember, okay, like, how to prepare. First of all, I'm glad that my teacher was actually really, really strict, and
Mm.
so when I told him about this, I said, like, yeah, I got in, so help, so I just took all the repertoire. And so strict teacher, strict coach, which in the end helps a lot. And then the second thing is that I just beg my friends. I ask my friends, I'll buy you
Mm.
pizza, I'll buy you dinner. Can you just come play, like, like a little, even a string quartet with a piano, So they cover the parts, and then I will start
Oh,
practicing with them.
right.
Yeah.
So you didn't
And
necessarily need a full orchestra in front of you to practice. Yeah.
no, no. And then of
Okay.
course, then these friends I trust a lot as musicians as well. So they can also tell me, oh, Elim, here was not clear.
Oh,
So they give
yeah.
me feedback as well. Yeah.
Oh,
So it
that's a
was,
great idea.
yes, exactly. So have good friends around you. That's a very
Yeah.
important thing. Yes. Yes. Yeah. So that's how I remember I got through. Like that's how I prepared. It
Mm.
was crazy, not easy.
Yeah. And do you actually conduct the London Symphony Orchestra in the competition?
Yes. Yes, so
Wow.
there were 3 rounds,
Oh,
and the last round, when you finally get to to be a finalist, the three
yeah.
finalists, and that's with London Symphony.
Oh, and what did you conduct for the finals?
Oh goodness! So it was. I think I remember the 3 of us. We all had to conduct the Beethoven Egmont Overture. So that's like, we go back to back with that. And then we split up the 2 other pieces. One is Stravinsky. One is, wait, which piece? Symphony. Goodness.
Prom?
Uh, no. Oh my God, I'm blanking out on the piece. Anyway, it's a piece by Stravinsky, and then and Scheherazade. And Scheherazade is a
Oh,
big one, because I was like, there are 4 movements. How do you split that up? Split symphony in 3 movements. Stravinsky, duh.
okay. Okay.
And so I remember, okay, Scheherazade, you have 4 movements. That means someone has to conduct 2 movements. And
Mm.
it was all by drawing the little paper, and then to see what you got. And I got the 2 movements. So I got 2 and 3, which are like the quite the challenging movements in Scheherazade.
Mhm.
And I've never done the piece, and it's quite a tricky one for
Uh-huh.
conductors.
Yeah.
Uh, So it was, yeah, so I have to conduct all these pieces in front of London Symphony. And I remember I had like 1 hour of rehearsal, and then the judges were sitting in the orchestra. So they see me how I rehearse, and
Yeah.
yeah, so it was
Wow.
quite scary. Yeah.
Okay, but hey, you managed. So that's
So,
great.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
And I want to ask you because I mentioned I don't like to talk too much about competitions, but I have to say, when you're on stage like that in the finals of such a major competition, for me, I remember I always try to tell people, I would not treat it as a competition. It's a performance, right? You want to perform music, you want to perform your best, not to beat someone. And I wonder, for you, when you were there in that moment, what were you thinking? How were you dealing with the pressure?
I think very true what you just said. I also didn't. It's very strange because a part of me wanted to of course, get to see who are the other people, right? Who are in the final with you. You try to socialize, also yet find out who they are. So there's this urge, but then
Yes.
remember I just sort of stayed away. I remember that I'm I just need to focus on myself, and because I'm already in a very different environment. I've never been in London for a long time. So in that case, I'm just like, okay, I'm just going to take care. This is what I'm going to do, and then just sort of stay away from all that social
Yeah.
thing. I think that really helps. And then when I got through the first 2 rounds, and I knew that I'm going to be the last round. And like you said, I think at that point I remember I thought I won already. I never expected so much. So when the final round came, I thought I'm just going to enjoy it like a performance. And I was just really happy that I've done so well. And whether I win or not really was not important.
Yeah.
Then I was also thinking, like me standing in front of the LSO. I remember also in the rehearsal, they play, and I'm like, what am I going to say to them? It sounds like CD, and so I remember I was so in the moment, and of course I have to okay, Elim, come on, tell them, just share with everyone what I think about the music. And I have quite some particular ideas, and I ask in a very, of course, very respectful way. Yeah. And I remember during the break, one of the musicians came to me, and then she said, there's look, we're the LSO. So, in front of us, we have seen all the big names. But the thing is, just because we are the LSO, don't even try to impress us. Just do yourself. Be yourself. We want to know you. There's no time for trying to impress us that you're scared. So also at that moment I was like, oh my God, yes. Actually, yes. And that gave me such a relief also, because who am I impressed? It's so out of my zone that I'm like, okay, you know what? Yeah, just enjoy it and get it done.
Okay, this person sounds like a fictional fairy godmother who just came there and told you this.
I thought because she also doesn't need to say anything to me.
Yeah, I mean,
so yeah,
that's amazing. Yeah.
So that's why I think, I look back, I remember I was just enjoying the whole performance. Really, I thought it was just performing. And then when they announced the results, at that point, I'm really I'm so happy that I don't need anything else. So everything became a bonus, really.
Yeah, yeah. So after that, then we could say that's the beginning of your career, right?
Yeah. And then things changed.
It's just been going insane, probably.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. What was your first major gig after that? Or that you remember?
I think one of the big ones were, first, I think the one of the first things was to prepare the BBC Proms for Valery Gergiev.
Oh my goodness.
I remember I finished school in May, came to London, and then June they have this. So the proms is sort of gearing up, and then and one of the biggest first biggest assignments is that Gergiev is not going to be in the first two rehearsals. So you're going to rehearse and prepare the whole performance, which is all 5 Prokofiev piano concertos.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
And then I was thinking, I knew that he wrote like three of them. What? There are 2 more? I've never heard of them, and they were like, here are the scores, boom, So good luck, see you tomorrow at 9. And I'm like, then I was like, then it just went home, and then and all nighter. You have to deliver. So I was like, oh my god,
Okay, of course.
And so I remember like that was quite crazy because, and of course, then Gergiev came, and then that was also the first time I meet him like in like that sort of environment, and of course he was then the principal conductor of the LSO. And because of this, and more of helping him in his rehearsals, then it led to him inviting me to Mariinsky in Petersburg, and also then to take his orchestra to tour in South America. So that was actually like, it came sort of boom, 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 quite fast, and to look back, I would say I wish that those come a little bit later, because it's not that, there were moments that I remember I'm like, okay, I'm really too new, too green. And there are some pieces that I wish I didn't do it in front of them my first time.
Yeah, no, sure.
Yeah. And these are the things that, like, of course, now having the time to think about, what happens, because we usually, you understand, Trey, right? When the schedule goes like this, you actually don't think, how are you doing, how that went, even though that went a bit not as you wanted, you have to go on and go, focus on the next performance. But I remember, like, if I look back, that is something I wish, like, there are some pieces I wish I didn't do then. I wish I'd done it somewhere else before working with the Mariinsky, things like this.
Right. Now, after that, things kept rolling and coming in, and you're flying all over the world. And then you started getting, I guess people approached you and your manager about perhaps forming long-term relationships with orchestras, right? Becoming chief conductor, principal guest conductor of Scottish National, and now you're principal chief conductor of Antwerp Symphony, and you were also in Sweden, I believe?
Yes, I was there, yeah.
Yeah. And so how are these different then, when you're not just flying in and out for one or a week? Then you really start to develop some kind of relationships, right?
Absolutely. It's like, often use the analogy of when I like a date, like speed dating, right? You're basically sent into a group of people, and you have to make something great together in three or 4 days, right? Sometimes, I mean, in London, you have one day, or even sometimes 2 hours, and then the concert happens. So it's almost like, like, and when you meet someone, like, oh, I'm interested, like you're a great person, let's be friends, and then you want to then hang out more. And some people, like, we don't click, and then so no more. And of course, when you go on, like, there are a few orchestras, for example, actually, Royal Scottish, the whole, the whole sort of relationship come as, I remember I went there, during one of the smaller concerts, and I was a young conductor. Of course, they were trying me out and things like that. And it went really well. I really enjoyed them, working with them. And then the next concert actually came quite quickly, because it was a cancellation. So Jamie Yarvi was, I think he was the conductor, but then he got sick. And so quickly, like, I remember they were like, oh, is Elim available? And so it was something that I was like, sure, I am. It happens that I'm free.
Yeah.
And so there was this sort of, me immediately going back, and then that sort of, like sort of really solidify what I felt from the first time and what they felt as well. And then from there on, then we thought, okay, then, let's make something more long-term. And then, and I love it because but it's still like different from a chief, the chief position is really like when you're like, I'm in a relationship, this is real now, then you really think about something quite long, like for example, in Antwerp, I go there, I work with them 12 weeks a year. So I'm basically there every month. So you see the orchestra quite often, and there's something like you can make a goal, like let's really work on the sound, let's really woodwinds, let's really focus on intonation this year. Like, can we find a blending sound, and these things as a guest, when you're flying around, when I'm there only a few days, I mean, you talk about certain things that really need to be fixed in that moment, but then you don't dig too deep. It's not, there's some things you let the chief to take care of.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think we can just jump to questions because we have a lot from our listeners.
Sure.
And, because I think what we're discussing has already touched on so many of them. I think for me, I would like to start with just, well, obviously, you are a female conductor of Asian descent in a world where it's still predominantly male and European, or Caucasian. And so several people have wondered, basically, what is that like? Challenges, or do you enjoy being, so unique also? Or, what are your thoughts on that?
It's interesting because I try to not let this, I try to not think about that too much. Because of course, once you focus on these things, like you said, I'm Asian, I'm a woman, I'm quite small. I'm actually like not so tall. I remember like many places when I go on stage, and first they have to fix the podium because I'm just too small, and then you do need a bigger podium. Oh, and then the stand is so high, So this whole thing, and people laugh, and so I knew like there are these three things that I'm like I knew sort of play against me. And there were also places where like I remember also walking on stage, people already like even like I got a lot of looks like
Yes.
like these things, like is that so but because I knew it, and I don't yes, so I know these are the things that I have, but actually because of these things, when my downbeat goes, these things usually are gone in the next minutes. Because I try to be as prepared as I can, and so I think once the work comes in, all those things are gone. And actually in the end, it plays in a way sort of helped me, because I sort of turn all those things into sort of like what you said, my uniqueness. In a way I make it, so and now I don't think about it so much anymore. I mean, also of course there was this and we are living in a time when I think it started a few years ago when women become sort of more empowered, of course, and then people start to think like women should be in leadership positions, and music, of course, in the arts in general, certainly we're like, let's really focus on women. So I was also riding on this wave. I was really in the timing wise, I was lucky. But again, I really try not to play into this too much, because in the end I still want that I'm hired because of my abilities instead of because I'm a woman.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's probably the best approach to have. Now, I would like to, so speaking of, since you mentioned going to a first rehearsal, that first downbeat, a lot of people are very curious. Well, let me put it this way, I think, to summarize all the questions about that is, what are some of the most basic or, usual things you go to a first rehearsal prepared with? in your mind, or having, during your work beforehand, studying the score? Are there particular things you're looking for immediately?
Mm-hmm. Certainly. Well, of course, with you have to know your scores. So, you analyze it, you study it, and with whatever ways, I mean, that of the whole part is that you really you have to understand and prepare, or sort of foresee already what problems would come up, or what are the sort of spots that, okay, this really will be difficult. And why is it difficult? It's because the ensemble, because probably the cellos won't be able to hear this rhythm, or the basses probably will, they have to know they're playing with the timpani. So these are the things that I'm already sort of marking down, so that when it happens, I'm not caught in like a shock, because I already, knew that this is coming. And then immediately already there are some solutions, like, okay, basses, don't freak out, you are with the timpani. And then, and the point is then also, how help them to be together, like show perspectives. So these are the things that, and of course also change of tempos, that's always tricky. And so these are the spots that I make sure, from here getting to there, there's a way that, so I have to be so clear, there's no sort of doubts. Because once, of course, I think, as a musician, playing, when the conductor is doubting, then you're eaten alive.
Yeah.
Yes.
But by this point, I mean, you have conducted so many different, orchestras from so many different cultures, or, not just countries, even within countries, different cultures. And each orchestra has their own culture as well, and history, and, right, that they're very proud of, and things like that. So how do you deal with that? Especially, like we said, on the first rehearsal, it must be so intimidating.
Yeah.
Especially you're so much younger than most of them, and they've never met you before also. Do you have any tricks or or anything? So I know some people would resort to comedy, to humor or something, or other people would be more, very formal, very polite. What's your style? Or
I think with me, and related to what I was saying, because you have to sort of be 200% prepared. And even though I have the solutions in my head, or I sort of foresee, okay, these are the problems, when I'm on the podium, especially the first rehearsal, and usually I let them play for a certain sort of amount of music until I sort of get used that, maybe a movement of symphony or whatever. In the run through or read through, you have to use that time to see, okay, the winds have this tendency. Okay, I don't need to worry about the violins. You have a good leader. You already in that time, you have to analyze or assess, what are your priorities? Because there are so many things you can talk about, right? And you can, but the thing is, you have so only little time. And there are things that it's like, okay, this is not a problem at all, even though I thought it will be a problem. So in that moment, I have to be also so open to see actually what is in front of me, even though I have, my sort of version, and then decide three things. Okay, I need to really work with the woodwinds because they are not good. And
so
then
three things.
three to really focus on, especially and then already you can tell from what I have, can I bring it to where I want, And with that sort of time, okay, then I can sort of tackle with these things, and some of the things you will never be able to fix. Then let it go.
Sure.
So I'm already sort of make a game plan in that read through. And of course, then you start working immediately. And again, I think, yes, like you said, some of my colleagues as well, they're very funny. And if they're naturally funny, the humor will really help. But then at the same time, I think many musicians, they're there, and usually we're playing pieces that they have played, 100 times.
Yeah.
So I think one thing I also learned in my experience is that no one likes to rehearse. No one likes to repeat again and again, right?
Nobody likes to practice.
No. But then I think people appreciate when you tell them this is the goal, why am I repeating something? And give them, can we think about this? And once you get it, move on. you know. And so when you give a very clear goal and a direction to why are we doing this, and that's why, like, you have to decide when you stop, or when I stop and go back to something, this is what I want to fix. But instead of, you know, like, I think a rehearsal gets really destructive when you just sort of keep playing through and you don't understand why, and there's not really a point, you know. Yeah. So these are the things I'm trying, and every time, like you said, there's so many different cultures, different personalities also in your.
Yes, which actually that brings us. Because so many people are now asking. I think it's so interesting that you mentioned you had done quite a bit of studying in psychology. And I'm guessing that must in some way help you, because conducting is such a social job, right? You are dealing with 100 different personalities, like you just said, in front of you, and next week another 100, and you know, and they might not all be in a good mood or whatever, and you know, or not so friendly and open to someone new immediately. That aspect, I think, is something, you know, actually the talk today is one of the things that we really are curious about, how you're able to deal with that, because it's about, you're up there as a leader, but you also have to be a team player. And you also probably have to be a mediator. You have to be, you know, consoler, everything.
Yeah.
What do you think is the, you know, how do you approach, let's say you come to an orchestra that's, you feel they're hostile. What do you do?
I'm glad I haven't actually run into that yet. But there were times when I can tell, like, there are certain people that are like, definitely were there to challenge me. And then they keep asking questions, or like, I remember in Chicago, after the read through, even before I was gonna say something, already like a hand from one of the musicians and said, "Can you go back and sing me the rhythm in measure 244 to 247?" I'm not gonna sing a polyrhythm, you know, like 7/3, that sort of thing, in front of everyone, because it's a lost cause. If I, you know, so I think, I mean, one thing I have found that is very helpful, like you said, I think understanding psychology of people is very important, and actually knowing when to let it go and when to engage is really the sort of deal, the deal breaker.
Battles. You have to know how to pick your battles.
Exactly. That's why I said, like, when you hear something, pick one or two things and make those things really like, okay, that is going better. And then there's some people, like, you try 1 or 2 times, even 3 times, if it's not changing, let it go. And then, or else, you know, that person is gonna, like, you know, and then the call around them will also be like, oh my God, the conductor is picking on us. You know, so like, there are some things that, you know, like, okay, you know, and sometimes, you know, I also understand, you know, when I'm conducting, you see some people are having like, you know, some wind players or horn players, or they start to, like, you know, talk to each other and then sort of not pay attention. I also learned not to take it personal. Because they're actually, they may not be talking about me or bitching about me. It may be that the person is having a hard time with the valve, or with the valve piece, with the reed, you know, in the woodwinds, and they get really, you know, they can change their mood really drastically because of something else. But then if I don't take it personal, you know, that let it just, like, you know. And during the break, I also found that with these big personalities, talk to them during the break, like, get to know them a little bit. And then, you know, and if they have some big solo moments in the pieces, you know, talk to them and see how they think about it. And I think from, like, communication, you know, off the stage, sometimes actually opens up a lot of other things that, you know, that, because then the person will tell you stories, how they play it before, and then they will say, oh, what do you think about it? You know, so things like that, you know, that happens, and you have the time, and without having 80 people listen to, you know, the two of you trying to fix this one passage, you know. So it's also about efficient, but about understanding people, understanding what you're dealing with in front of you. And And really, like when it's like a hostile, when it's sort of confrontation,
Yeah.
I really don't do it on stage. But doesn't mean that I'm weak in that sense. But you just
Right.
tell everyone this is not the moment to do this. And then I go to
Yeah.
the person, yeah, and then and then in the end, that this person has something else on his mind or her mind that is not about me. But
Mm-hmm.
they just took the moment to find it out,
Right, right. So, I mean, yeah, I just to summarize, I think you have a lot of good tips here because, like we're saying, you know when to and which battles to pick. And don't always do it in front of everybody because yeah, that kind of pressure is too much for both you and the person you're talking about, the
Exactly.
musicians, individually off stage. That's such a great idea. Because I think a lot of conductors actually are not like that. During breaks, they go into their room, they're on
Yeah.
the phone with their
Sure.
managers.
Exactly.
They don't, the musicians don't feel like they can talk to you then in
Yeah.
that case.
And I think
And
it changed in also, I think the sort of old maestros, and to now, I think we are in a climate where collaboration and open communication is much more preferred now. And also, I know that, I mean, I'm still, I think, conducting, in maybe my 10th or 11th time Scheherazade, maybe, 20 times. But you have people on stage who have played this, I don't know, even play with really big names. And why argue, and why, like, this is the way to do it. There are always many ways to do something.
yeah, yeah.
So.
But now I have to ask you, what happened in Chicago? Everybody wants to know, I think.
Sure. So yeah, so the musician asked me to sing this crazy
Right.
rhythm, and I remember it's a new piece, it's a world premiere, and I remember all the musicians were there, like sitting, and they were already like, So I remember the composer was there.
Yeah.
So I addressed that, yes, thank you for pointing out this is a very difficult part, and not only you have a very difficult rhythm, everyone else actually are in their own sort of rhythmic division at this point. Composer, why don't you address this part? How would you like to, what are you thinking in this part and how we should approach this? So I just transfer the ball. And then, so I also address that, to the person, it's not only you that have a very difficult part, everyone else has. And I bet everyone is thinking about those measures like, oh my goodness, what is happening?
That is brilliant.
Yeah, because I'm not going to sing like in front of everyone. You're going to, anyway, you're going to make a mistake or wrong and someone else will point it out,
Yeah.
And of course, over the few days, the musician has so many problems with with counting or whatever. And actually in the end, and he kept sort of challenging me or, and in the end, actually the musicians in the orchestra went to him and said, it's enough.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
you won over people to your side who then went, made it so you didn't have to do anything.
I didn't.
Well, I think what you're saying, but I think what you're saying, this is an amazingly important point, that especially in Asian cultures, we don't do enough or have enough of an emphasis on, which is what you just said. You give credit to people first. You don't make them feel, you're not just scolding them the way, a traditional pedagogical theory in Asia is. A lot of countries in Asia, it's like the teacher knows everything, the student just has to listen. And I think a lot of times conductors behave like that. They're like, no, listen to me, you're wrong. But I love how you just said, you give them credit, you understand, you give them understanding. And again, maybe that's your psychology background coming to play, saying, I understand you are not the only one with the difficult part. Everybody, it's difficult for everyone. That makes such a big difference. Also, because I've had to do that too. In chamber music, when you're rehearsing, you can say, oh, that's wrong. Oh my God. It's like tossing a grenade into.
Absolutely. Because once you throw a grenade, it's sort of like, you feel you have no option but to throw one back, right? Because you feel attacked.
Exactly.
So, and then so I usually in these moments, I'm like, okay, don't throw any grenades yet. Why is he throwing one? So then I try to, of course, that's why I engage, but not in a sort of, throw you back another one way. And usually what I'm trying to do is actually in the end, you provide perspectives to everyone because they only see their own part, but I'm the one who has a different part. And why, so it's, I think that's one thing I think it's very important as a conductor or as a leader, and even in chamber music, like in the end, you have to understand that, why that person is not hearing this, because he or she only, have one part, and then you have to provide the other things that this person cannot see. It's and then of course there are moments when you feel, you know what, everyone is tired, it's super hot in the room, let's go out, have a coffee. You just leave because you keep working, you know this is gonna happen. And the little thing about trust also, because also in the end, people like to I also find that, orchestra musicians often say to me, it has become really sort of jaded, like this whole thing of like, like conductors coming in, tell us what to do, you want this, and it often gets very uncreative for them, for musicians, because they just sit there and then you have people barking at them, like, don't do this, don't do this, So in these ways, I'm also trying to not give them the solution right there. Sometimes you just give them, think about, I want this sound. Can you create this?
Yeah.
Instead of change the bowing to up bow this. I mean, of course, there are moments when you really just need to say, can we change the bowing, or please at the tip, But then some moments when you have the time, get the musicians to engage in a creative way, because they are all, artists. So I think sometimes we forget that too, and then it becomes a very sort of like, you just do this, deliver this, finish. So I have to really also try to think about that as well, and I'm telling myself as well.
I mean, I think also what you're saying, it's a very 21st century attitude to music making
I'm glad.
in the best sense, about collaboration and maybe less hierarchy and more understanding. I mean, 75 years ago, forget it, right? The maestros were like beating everyone with the batons. And I mean, I think that's probably a great direction that we're going in. It makes the music so much more collaborative and everybody has a stake in it. There's just some other basic questions. Just going back, you said singing was a great help. Did piano and cello also help you then?
Of course. I mean, one thing I'm trying to do now is to get a piano in my place, because of course, in the end, I mean, of course, the piano helps you listen to all these, like many things, much more symphonically. I mean, you can play at least many things together. But of course, actually, funny enough, I learned cello to play in the orchestra. That was the reason. Because because I was like, I mean, play piano, I can sometimes play in the orchestra, but I really wanted to understand, and be a part of that. So, and the cello became, and I love the sound of the cello, which I don't need to argue with you about that. So, but so it was sort of, but I think singing in the end was still always the most direct thing for me. And then, but definitely but the other two instruments, of course, actually having learned cello, it really helps a lot when I'm talking about strings. In orchestra, you understand what is the bow pressure, where in the part of the bow you have to play. There's certain things that is not natural, and then when you make the sound, when you conduct string music, there's a lot of repertoire for just strings, because having played cello, the way they make the sound when you connect with them is very different. And singing helps you actually understand the brass needs, the wind instruments need a breath.
I was about to ask, what about winds and brass?
Exactly.
Okay.
Then actually, and sometimes I forget that too. And you have to immediately okay, just sing it. And actually, funny enough, when you say when in doubt, sing. When I'm afraid, sing as well. Yeah.
I just quickly going back to the whole, working teamwork. I think this is yet another aspect, because like we were saying before, conductors used to be like almost like a dictator, right? And now I think for better, most likely, All the musicians feel like perhaps they have more of a say or more of a stake in a performance. And
Sure.
but when it doesn't work, besides that, someone questioning you incessantly, what if the orchestra themselves are not getting along with each other? Have you encountered that?
You mean within the orchestra, people are like,
Yeah,
of
yeah.
course.
In their playing, you could hear it, or
Yeah,
in the rehearsals.
of
How
course.
what do you do then? Do you play the babysitter?
I think that's when, like, and then I will go back to what you said. I think as a conductor, there's so many hats, like sometimes
Mhm.
I'm the facilitator, and sometimes I'm the leader, and then sometimes I'm the cheerleader, and sometimes I'm the consoler, and I think, but one hat I have to always remember is like, I'm in the front and I'm the one who has everyone's parts. And that, when they're not getting along, it's because of some, I don't know, many, many things can be behind, right? But I think what I always have to remind everyone is that we are on stage, and with this problem, because I'm
Mhm.
the one who see what is happening musically, like what is happening, that's when I need to be the head of the police and say, no, you are rushing.
Mm.
And so these are the moments they actually will appreciate, because you know you are not siding, playing favorites. I think these are also something that as a leader is really important to not do, and
Not
I
to
have
play favorites.
not to play favorites, not to
Yes.
side with people, with things or people, when because you are friends with them off stage, because on stage you
Mhm.
really have to be like, it's everything for the music. Here is not working out because please, you're rushing and you are not
Yeah.
listening. Watch their
Uh,
bow. Don't get there. Don't play until you see this. And
yeah.
this is very objective, like this, please just make this work. Timpani, please lead, double bass, look at the timpani. You can see the
Mhm.
stick, boom,
So
together.
be fair, basically.
Be
You're
fair.
being very
Yeah,
fair. You're being
yeah,
absolutely fair.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean that
yeah,
makes sense.
absolutely. And yeah, I've been in situations when musicians wanted me to pick sides, or like, and that's when it gets really
Mm,
messy, and you never want to get into that, because
right.
you will be lose-lose situation.
And that and so in a situation like that where they are pushing you to take sides, you, is that where you're looking for things that are fair to say, right?
Yeah, and then the things that why they're not getting along, when it goes into things that are non-musical, then you
Mm,
are better leave it. Because then,
yeah.
and, as a conductor, as an artistic advisor, or I am responsible for everything on stage artistically. When so in the end, you have to remind people, please, you know do this, like we all want this to work.
Yeah. Be
So
professional.
yeah, exactly, we have to remind people that, and we don't have a lot of time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So behave, and
Yeah.
it takes the gut to say it, and that's something I'm also learning. I've been too nice at the beginning of my
Mm,
career, and
okay.
yeah, and so I want to be nice, I want to be likable, we try because you want to go back, you want to get more gigs, and but over the and as I learn and gain more experience, I know I have to put on that hat, and you have to be the sort of the mother and say, don't fight anymore, really,
Mm,
clean up.
yeah.
You have to say
Yeah.
these and be fair, just look at
Yeah.
situation.
So, I mean, teamwork can come in so many guises from what you're saying, because sometimes if it depends, right? If it involves the work itself, then yes, you absolutely have to jump in and be the peacemaker, be the judge, be the UN, the United Nations, and but say things that are objective. But but when you're able to tell it's not to do with the music or with the work, then it's not your place, because that's something completely different. That's something
Yeah.
personal.
And of course it's not, I'm also not saying to be like completely cold and like,
Right,
not
right, right.
none of my business, because of course we are human beings, we're going to
Hmm.
be closer to certain people, and I try to get to know everyone. And
Yeah.
of course, that there may be conflicts because maybe a musician is getting old, and the ability is losing,
Yeah,
but the person is
sure.
still persistent to play, you know.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
those are the very tricky situation where actually it's good to have a talk privately and say, is this person, you know, understanding what's happening? Because some musicians in that situation, they may not know, or they may be in denial of their ability is going down, you know. And it's very tricky. And in these situations, because still it affects the artistic side of things,
Yeah.
then in those moments I have to get in. But again, not as the conductor,
Yeah.
but you know, I'm going in to understand as a human being, hey, you know, what is going on? How do you feel recently as you play the solo? Like, well, you know, to understand, and then from there, yeah.
No, you know, again, I like what you're saying very much about being human, because, you know, this, again, we have this tradition, long tradition, especially in the East, of just, you know, all the way from Confucius down, you know, where the teacher just makes you do it, learn it that way. We forget sometimes if you're a little softer with the human touch, you get even better results. And I think that's so important to hear you say that, being human with your musicians, not just being a conductor.
Yeah, I do think that, and maybe I think it's something also in psychology, especially you know, in like the positive psychology side, you know, how to motivate people. And I think many companies, like big business companies, they try to actually hire, you know, psychologists who study behaviors of people. You know, how do you motivate and get people to really deliver their best? And that's
And
something actually is very important as musicians as well. I mean, why, how do I make people sit there for 3 hours and, you know, and will want to do their best instead of them getting on their phone trying to get out, and then, you know, so it's something, you know, yeah, we're waiting for the moment, like, and I can pack up, you know.
you
So
have you have provided the perfect segue to maybe the final questions that we have,
okay.
because now everybody is asking, first, what are you doing online during this lockdown? Anything? Or are you doing anything online? And second, also, what is your view on the future of online music making and classical music online?
Oh, big question. I've been also thinking about this. First of all, I think weirdly, I mean, I will be very honest, I was hit quite hard. I think, you know, also when I think my last concert was February, the end of February, and then once March kicks in, I was home, and all I'm doing was to cross off, you know, concerts and concerts. And then I think at one point by May, I was really down, you know, just because I'm looking, you know, and as a conductor, I need people to work, and a group, a gathering is something that no one wants right now, because, you know, and of course you have to think of the health of everybody and the safety. And actually, you know, I would think, you know, if I was soloist, I actually would get more work than a conductor or an orchestral player. And you know, it was interesting because at the beginning we all saw a lot of content suddenly, right? People are
Right.
really pumping a lot of performances to just put online, and everybody was sort of, you know, I mean, of course there's this sort of big solidarity feeling of like, you know, let's keep on playing. But then at some point, it was also too much, to a point that I felt like, what are we doing? And how do you do this? Because you also see a lot of concerts where you use Zoom, right? You know, in your people playing one part, and then you have these technicians put them all together. I watched the whole Met Opera online gala as well. It was, I mean, it was beautiful, but at the same time, it was so sort of, it makes me ask the question, like, is this life? Like, is this where what we want? And is there no possibility of, you know, live music again? Because I think in the end, especially orchestra music and actually making music, making it live and having someone there listening live, it can only exist in that moment. Is that now, you know? Once you record something, it's a very different process. And that's when I started asking, you know, these questions, and because I have so much content and a lot of them actually are not good. And then I start to think, like, you know, what exactly this whole digital presentation of music, like, there are, of course, you know, we're grateful and I'm very happy, for example, I got a week to work in July back with my orchestra. But then again, I think I'm questioning, you know, all these recorded performance that are streamed later, because then it's like, what is the meaning of live music, of performing live with an audience experiencing? I think what we all miss is this being to experience something in that moment. I think that was the power of a concert. You know, I mean, I was transformed. I was shocked as a child because I was there listening to an orchestra playing Rite of Spring in front of me, you know. And so these are the moments and experience that I'm like, I'm not willing to give up yet. I would hope that that is something we can experience. It's very different, you know, we're all on our phones, on our screens. And it's something, what is live and what is not live, that line is being blurred. And so I would hope that, of course, we will depend on digital sort of forms for a long time with this happening, with the pandemic. But I think we cannot sacrifice, you know, in the end, this power of music. That's that fact, you know.
So the online music making is just more of a temporary remedy in your view.
Absolutely. But at the same time, I do think that it also shows how many orchestras and organizations are really behind on investing in technology. Because in the end, yes, we still want to reach out to a lot of people. And I think that's when I think a lot of places, a lot of people are like shocked that I have no camera, actually. There are many halls that actually have no, not even, you know, like anything like that is installed to help. So I think it also helps that to raise the question like, okay, we need to catch up on this. But at the same time, as we move on, like you said, I do think it is a temporary thing. In the end, I think, you know, what we believe in making music, you have to give it to someone in that moment.
I think, no, you're absolutely right, because the power of a live performance just cannot be substituted or replicated online, especially on a phone, right? Who wants to listen to a whole symphony on a telephone?
Yeah, and with these, you know, the really and yeah, it is. I mean, of course, I'm a big fan of like the digital Konzerthausorchester Berlin feel. I mean, you know, with that form, you can, you know, really listen to a lot of performances. But again, like, you know, it's nothing when compared to you being in the hall, being, you know, when time stopped and you actually stopped even, you know, to not think about where I'm going to have dinner after the concert or who I'm going to see after the concert. But, you know, something happened in that moment in space and time.
Yeah. Well, so maybe one last thought, because speaking of, you know, this whole, you said you were transformed when you were little in live concert. These days, since you're doing so much, or at least until February, and I'm sure soon again, I read in September, are you in Helsinki or October?
I was going to be, but that is canceled now as well because of the new quarantine rules.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But I'm sure something will be coming up soon. But meanwhile, some people are also curious. Maybe you could leave us with some ideas of where you're getting your inspiration, musical inspiration, especially since you're constantly having, you know, the orchestra repertoire is just humongous. You know, there's so much to learn with each new piece. How are you developing for the future your musical personality? And maybe how would you recommend young audiences if they want to, you know, go this path? You know, where do you look? Where do you get your inspiration?
Well, I think one thing is it may be such a cheesy thing or maybe silly thing to say, but I think one thing that you know, this whole thing of me believing or wanted to be a conductor, actually the first really started was with this Disney Fantasia movie, like the old one. You know,
for many people,
right?
I know.
And it was amazing creation back then, you know, and with only music, no dialogue, you know, and you see pictures, you see stories happen, and then you actually full of imagination because there's no dialogue. You can think or imagine what happens, and of course, with that movie and with especially Mickey Mouse, you know, in the magic hat, and but I think with that whole idea of that, to that you sort of magic can happen, this idea or dream big is something that sort of stays, actually not even sort of, it stays strongly since I was a child. You have to be able to dream big and dream something completely like, you know, even though it's so out of your zone, it doesn't hurt to dream. And I think that's one big idea. And especially in a time like this, you know, when the world is really like getting really difficult with crazy things happening, and, you know, no one ever imagined a pandemic like this can happen. I think with that, and, you know, having this sort of dream is really important, because that makes you, makes me be able to, especially now, I think a lot of orchestras or, you know, we all try to go back to normal. Everyone else actually try to go back to normal. But the thing is, I really think that because the world has got to a point that is so unimaginable, you know, actually it makes us know that, think, or actually it makes me believe that we cannot just go back to normal because things are not normal. So you have to find new ways to make, you know, to do what you really love. They're also focused on the now. I think these ideas are, you know, I think musicians, we get also very narrow-minded because we only practice and, you know, we want to perfect our art. We only read and listen to things, you know, like in our sort of discipline. But I think, you know, what my experience tells me is that, you know, I often get so inspired by actually non-musicians. You know, when you talk to people who because then you really realize how the world is so big. It's really beyond the Beethoven score. And actually, and you would think also when Mahler wrote his symphonies, I mean, he really brought the world in, and there's so many things that is, you know, when that you know, why am I being, you know, troubled by is this note short or long? Is this a, you know, what is this a little marking mean? But when you leave, you know, and talk to people who are non-musicians, and then actually some of the craziest and best ideas came from, you know, people that I thought would never, you know, like things, the places and people that you would least expect that would inspire you. I think those are the moments when that I sort of taught me, and it's really true. And really keep your friends who are non-musicians and keep talking to them, because these are, especially now, I think, and like, for example, yesterday was just this crazy idea was born because of a conversation with a composer who was thinking to ask a comedian to come in, and then this new form of, and you know, meet and commission a piece. You know, like these are the things, and it would be so crazy, but then why not? Because the world is crazy enough.
Yeah,
so you know,
true.
instead of trying to go back to the normal, why not, you know, completely think of something new and collaborate with people that you would think that is not possible, or everyone else that is weird. Like, why would you do that? That's why, because I think it's possible. Why not try it? You know, I think that's another thing that, yeah, because I've also, you know, have, of course, multiple people tell me it's not possible. Like, I remember even my own teachers tell me, like, Elim, just conduct choirs. It's easier. There are more ladies. You know, don't think of orchestra. It's very lonely, you know. And there are all these things, and to journalists as well, you know, like, I remember I get questions like, you should only conduct feminine music. Don't.
What? Oh, okay.
Yeah, like, you have many people in different forms of, you know, telling you no. Of course, you have critics as well, you know, and there's all these things, but then.
Okay.
Yeah, and of course, I think to deal with reviews is also another thing that also taught me, like, you know, in the end, and especially I think with this lockdown, it changed. I think we all suddenly have so much time to be with yourself, right? And then you start to really think, and you have to deal with yourself. And I think you get to know yourself much better in this time, what really you care and what you like and what you really don't care and don't like.
Yeah.
I think after this period of time, I hope that I think people get also wake up a bit by the world, by what's happening.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well,
So
I
I think,
think, you know, the word you said, magic, I think I would use that too for the lack of a better word to describe what we do, isn't it?
Exactly.
You know, you can because before you were saying you would study a score and analyze everything in preparation for rehearsal, which is absolutely necessary. But at the end of the day, no amount of music theory can explain the feeling we get from the music. And I think that's, it's not cheesy at all because it is so true, you
It
know?
is. So yeah, so
And
I think it is what that uh, keeps my faith in this, in what we're doing, because it's really like, you know, as much we can rehearse and make it sound perfect and make everything in tune and together, if the magic's not there, then I also don't want it. You know,
mhm,
it's like, so that's why I think, to go back, I think in the end, I hope really that we can, you know, we have to keep live music
sure,
there,
yeah.
because that's something you can only experience, and it happens, you know, in that moment.
Okay. Well, thank you. I think we should let you go. You've been very, very generous with sharing all your thoughts with us.
Well, thank you.
And, you know, it's been a delight hearing about where you've come from and your whole process. And, you know, your career is just exploding. You know, we don't need to wish you any more luck because you don't need any at the moment. And
Uh,
all we can say is that we could really, all of us are looking forward to seeing you live. And I've seen you online and I can't wait to see you live, truly.
well, thank
And
you. I hope you,
yeah,
yeah, go back live too. Yeah.
yeah.
So
And, you know, when things are normalized again, hopefully we'll be able to meet in person as well.
absolutely. Yes.
So thank you very much for your time
Okay.
today.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye. So I would just like to say a big thank you again to Elim for this really fascinating talk and all her insights. And our next webinar will be in 2 weeks um, on August 29th with another wonderful young conductor from Hong Kong and Macau, Liu Guokman. Leo, I think we just call him these days. So he's done lots of concerts all over the world. He was assistant under Gustavo Dudamel in the Philadelphia Orchestra. He's now the chief, I'm not exactly sure the title, but the chief artistic programming director of the Macau International Festival. So please join us for what I'm sure will be another very, very interesting and revealing talk in 2 weeks' time. Thank you very much.